Thanks. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for coming. Nice clear skies today, sun shining, winds out there but no rain, and I'd like to welcome everyone and thanks for coming to the Celebrate the Life and Memorial for Peter Geoffrey Akehurst. First off, just a bit of housekeeping. Obviously, if anyone's got phones, if they could attend to that before we continue. Flaky, Digger, Diggs, Old Boy, Old Mate, Pa, Pooh, Dad, Peter. Whatever name you knew him by, he was the same person. Kind, generous, gentle, dedicated, cheeky, fun-loving and caring. I was lucky enough to come into the life of the Akehurst family almost 25 years ago, and Pete welcomed me from day one. Having come from what I look back on now, a similar surf club and community-focused family, I think we're always going to get on from day one. Some people just connect, and I feel as though I've been welcomed into this family, and Peter was certainly one to welcome me. And the family that I've created out of that has been outstanding. It's funny when someone's gone, you can obviously still think of some stories, and we'll obviously hear some stories today, have some laughs and probably shed some tears. And my memories, I can just share a couple of quick ones here. I can still see him in the kitchen taste testing the pork crackling, even though he's supposed to be carving it up and serving it to everyone else. I can still see him driving through Avalon in the Toyota Camry, which smelled of wet towels, twigging thoughtfully on his ear while he pondered what he was doing for the day, heading into the office. I can also still see him having his big breakfast in the mornings. Saturdays was a ritual, off for an early morning swim, back for a bacon and eggs, sausages, chops, baked beans, toast, the crossword, paper in the sun, out to clean the pool, cozies on, shirt, hat, couple of hours, in the shower for 11 o'clock, off to golf. Back from golf at about 4 or 5, and then it was, where are we going tonight, Jude? Avalon or Palmy? Later on in our relationship, he provided me with invaluable counsel and advice as I took on some senior roles involved in the surf club at Avalon Beach. I used to come home from the meetings and give him a rundown of what had happened, ask him who was this person, who was that person, and he would always love to keep up to date with what was happening. However, ours were not a shade on some of the battles at our meetings compared to earlier ones between himself and another club legend, Rick Miller. He obviously knew what he wanted, and it was very hard to talk him around once he'd made up his mind and done his research on something. He would always hear you out, but wasn't inclined to change his mind. I have been honoured and privileged to be part of, or to help Pete out in these last few years, and however testing at times they may have been. Credit to Judy and the girls for getting through this period, and really feel it's been an honour and a privilege on my part to have been part of that. So welcoming you into today, and I'd like to call on Nicole Williams to come and share a few, and the sisters, sorry, all coming together for their stories.
Our dad, Peter Geoffrey Akehurst, was born in Roseville on the 2nd of May 1941 to parents Desmond and Emily. Dad had two brothers, an older brother Sid and a younger brother Jim. Dad lived most of his childhood in Roseville, apart from a brief stint in Melbourne, and then later in his teenage years the family moved to a waterfront property in Newport. Dad attended East Linfield Public School and then North Sydney Boys High. He told me he did an IQ test after year 3 and rated at 124, which was quite high apparently. This qualified him to get into North Sydney Boys High, which pleased his parents enormously, as only 2 boys qualified, and he got a fishing rod as a reward. Dad wanted to do marine biology when he left school, but in those days you had to go to Japan to study it, so that was out of the question. So instead he answered a couple of job ads. The first for a stockbroking firm where he made it to the final 2. He considered himself quite a good catch, coming from a good school and living on the North Shore and playing A-grade golf. The second ad was with a firm of chartered accountants, and he got the job there. It was there that he met a pretty young girl at reception who was later to become his wife, Judy. Mum and Dad married on the 12th of November 1966, and they had 3 daughters, myself, Sally and Melinda. They moved to Avalon in 1970, and that's where they stayed, eventually building a new house on the Overgreen block next door after finding out they actually owned it, and then in recent times building an extension on that house where Mum and Dad then moved into the upstairs part. As a family, we did our best to keep Dad at home for as long as possible until it just got too much and we had to move him into a nursing home in February this year. Before Dad pretty much lost his speech completely, he dictated to me his lifetime memorable moments. We actually never got to finish it off, but it had already gotten to 9 pages in length. Some of these moments included sitting in a room in the tax office with Chuck Berry and his promoter doing a deal. He said Chuck was a very scruffy fellow. His 2 holes in 1 at golf, one at Palmy and one at Blackheath. The 17 times he swam the Palm Beach to Whale Beach swim. His near-death drowning in a huge surf off the Gola Beach on his ski, where he ended up in an inverted position above the ski and then landed in a bed of thick kelp and didn't know which way was up. Him racing a random lady in the pool at Gola Beach, who turned out to be Shane Gould. He did, he said. He told me he won. Yeah. And his time as club captain of Avalon Beach Surf Club, where on his way down to the surf one morning, he was approached by 2 young surf club members. They said, "Pete, we've just done a rescue. A fisherman was washed off the rocks at Little Avalon and we've rescued him in the IRB." Dad said, "That's great." But as an afterthought said, "Wait a bit, you guys have never been in an IRB." In the final days of his life, Dad got to watch videos of some of the Avalon teams competing at the first IRB carnival of the season in his digger boat. He wasn't happy to hear that it had flipped, but he was very proud to hear that it had raced so well. Zach? He passed away peacefully, surrounded by family and his longtime good friend John Harper, whilst we were all talking about IRB stories. Gone but never forgotten, Dad. You will forever be in our hearts. Oh. We got Maddie. Stop. Stop it. On behalf of my mum, my sisters and our whole family, I'd like to thank you all for coming today to celebrate Dad's life. The amount of people here is a true testament to the person that he was and how many connections he has made throughout his amazing life. Growing up, we could never go anywhere without being asked the question, "Are you one of Peter Akehurst's daughters?" Gin and I are lucky to still carry the Akehurst surname, so I'm sure we'll continue to be asked for many more years to come. We always have and always will answer proudly, "Yes, we are Peter Akehurst's daughters," because that is something to be truly proud of, as we were super proud of him. Stop it. I have to poke her when she cries. As all of you, as all of you here would know, Dad's greatest loves were the beach, the ocean, the surf club, and his beloved IRBs. In fact, when he had this IRB named after him, I'm quite sure that it overtook the birth of his children as the greatest day of his life. He managed to instill his love of the water in the 3 of us, despite teaching us to swim by throwing us into the deep end of Avalon Pool. It was literally sink or swim, and needless to say, we all learnt to swim very quickly. There must have been some method to his madness, as we all turned out to be very successful school swimmers. We all did Nippers, Avalon Bilgola Swim Club, Johnny Carter Swim School. We all joined Avalon Surf Club and competed several times in the big swims like the Palmy to Whaling. Not as many as he did. We did all this willingly because we loved it all, and we did all with Dad by our side for support and encouragement, and in the case of Nicole and I, our bronze medallion instructor. I have no clue what we actually did in winter. Our summers were so jam-packed, I'd say our winters were very boring. Okay, we go. Dad led such a full, active life and gave so much to this local community. So it was a devastating blow when he was diagnosed with a disease that would take all that away from him. We were so lucky as a family to have huge support from everyone around us. This really is an amazing community that we live in.
I want to mention a few people that had a big impact on Dad's last few years. Stephanie, his physio, and came to his house when he was still at home and continued his treatment once he moved to the nursing home. He developed a bond with you very early and looked forward to your visits. These visits were extremely beneficial to him mentally and physically. Also, his long-term friend Doug, who is here somewhere, who provided such comfort to him, especially in the final weeks. Your visits meant a lot to him and he so looked forward to them each week. Also a shout out to the team at Palliative Care in Mona Vale Hospital. Your level of care and compassion was outstanding and we could not have asked for a better place or better people to send Dad on his final journey. Dad, when you took your last breath, you took a piece of our hearts with you and left a huge hole in our lives and in the lives of everyone here. You fought like a champion against a cruel disease that was always going to beat you. And God, did you fight. I think he was still fighting with you on this last night. Now it's time for you to rest. No more fighting, no more pain, no more suffering. Just eternal peace. Avalon has lost a true legend. And we have lost the best dad ever. Until we meet again, we'll love you forever.
I stand here today doing something I thought I would never do. Wear an Avalon Beach IRB team racing shirt. This thing is so old that I was too scared to wash it in case it fell apart. And he was a fat bastard because it's huge. Dad and I had a healthy rivalry between surf boats and IRBs, and I only got involved with his sport when Dad could no longer get to carnivals, and I started driving him to watch racing. He was the worst passenger and fell asleep as soon as we left Avalon and snored the whole drive. I would purposely swerve and drive over bumps just to wake him up, but he'd just give me a look and fall right back asleep. Now I've somehow become the nominated team official and I know far too much about IRB racing. We're a very close family. We're loud, we're very inappropriate, and we're total oversharers, and you can't keep a secret in this family. If you tell one of us a secret, in 30 seconds, everyone knows. Dad was the most inappropriate of us all, and I never forget being at a very Catholic funeral, and all he was worried about was whether the priest was up there drinking the good stuff or not. And how he could get up there without being struck down. I think Mum gave him a look and he did not move. We're also total rule breakers, and in a room with a 2-person visiting limit, we managed to squeeze 15 into the room at the end. And if I had $1 for every time someone was told to use their inside voice, this would be an unlimited bar tab today.
JC.
Yeah, that was my daughter. Dad loved his golf, his family and IRBs pretty much in that order, and despite my best efforts, he remained a vault when it came to what went on at IRB carnivals. The only thing I got out of him was that Jason Brown snores like a trooper and that Avalon Beach needs to stop turning up drunk or they'll never beat Kiama. That were his words. Only a few months ago, he had me downloading the latest specs for propellers and he studied that for a very long time. When I started officiating at carnivals recently, he loved running through all the rule changes and looking at the race footage. Again, sorry Todd, Zach, until he saw his boat upside down. That got the angry face. He did slip up once though, and he told me how the boat that we have on patrol got named Phil. I'm pretty sure every Avalon Beach Club member has wondered who the hell Phil is. Turns out that when Dad was treasurer, someone by the name of Phil, who may or may not have had to offload some money very quickly, needed to donate to the surf club and thought that it would be a great thing to do to donate to nippers. Dad thought that his money would be better off spent buying an IRB, and thought what better way to name it Phil. Hence the IRB named Phil. He had a great sense of humour, and one of our favourite things to do as a kid was to get the other in trouble with Mum. It usually involved drinking the last of her can of Coke and not replacing it in the fridge, leaving a mess in the kitchen, walking dirt in the house, or the big one, walking dirty footprints over her freshly mopped floor. Whoever was there when Mum noticed and started nutting off would convincingly say it was the other one and sit back giggling while that one got in trouble, not knowing what they did. When he got the diagnosis of corticobasal syndrome, let's hope we never hear that again,
Never ever.
he was only the 4th case that the neurologist had ever seen. We were told to go home, get his affairs in order, and enjoy the time we had left. No one really could tell us what was in store, being it was so rare. It's not genetic though, so we're safe. We were devastated, but it allowed us to concentrate on the time we had left. We all became his carers, even the grandkids, and did what needed to be done in order to keep him at home as long as we could, with my amazing mother doing the bulk of the work. We saw things we could never unsee, and we did it with a laugh and quite a few swear words along the way. One memorable moment for me was when we were putting him to bed, and Mum, may or may not have been playfully shoved by Ashley, and ended up falling face first in his naked lap. We were laughing so much that we could not help her get up, and Dad just sat there giggling. A lot of people asked us how we were able to communicate with him when he lost the ability to speak. The answer to that was great difficulty and patience. Whenever he wanted to say something, we understood that he was trying to say A, B, C, and we would pull out this A4 card and we would point to each letter, one at a time. When we got to the one he wanted, he would stick his tongue out for yes, close his mouth for no, and we would write that letter up on the board. Sometimes he would spell out great big sentences and get frustrated when we got it wrong, didn't put an apostrophe, or just blended words together. Other times he would mess with you, like the time in hospital when he spelt out to Mum and I, his G-spot was hot. I could tell he thought he was hilarious because he kept laughing about it for the rest of the night. Poor Mum wet herself. What he actually wanted to say was that his heel spot hurt. Nicole actually tried to throw this card out by putting it at the bottom of a box of junk at a council clean-up last week, only to come out the following morning and find everything had been taken but this card that was all by itself on the grass. So it's going in the coffin with him today. During his last few days, it was hard to get a smile out of him, but we managed a couple of times. Once was when I told the story about a certain IRB team member and how, after passing out after a few too many bevies, someone decided it'd be funny to draw an 8-ball in permanent marker on the back of his very bald head so that he couldn't see it. Dad had a little chuckle about this, and I think he was pleased to see that the team was still up to their old tricks. The other laugh was when I mentioned the Mooloolaba IRB Carnival 20 years ago. I don't have any idea of what went on here, but I know that it definitely involves Paul Jones, Pete Carter and Johnny Harper.
Johnny knows.
Johnny won't reveal it. But he wouldn't name any others for fear of incriminating them, so it must have been epic because every single time that carnival was mentioned, he would roar with laughter. Towards the end, Dad really struggled and we knew that he couldn't keep fighting much more longer. My niece Sophie and I were with him late one night when he whispered to us, ABC. It was getting hard to work out what he was trying to say, but we reluctantly got this bloody card out, and after about 15 minutes, we had the words, hand held, written on the whiteboard. We instantly became blubbering messes, and we said, of course, Dad, we will hold your hand for as long as you need us to. We're here for you. We came to the only conclusion that was because we were his favourites, and he wanted us close, no one else. Dad started getting agitated and making noises, and we heard ABC, and we said, don't worry, you don't have to say anything more, we get it. But he started, being a bit demanding, so we got the card out again. Sophie scribed, and I pointed at letters, only for him to spell out the letters F-A-N. He wanted a bloody handheld fan board so that someone could stand there and blow it on him. I stayed with him on his last night, and every time I would get comfortable and fall asleep, he would make noises only for me to stand back up there at his face, spraying water with his bloody fan. I like to believe that he did take his last breath while listening to me talk about IRBs. I was telling a story he told me one morning when I was driving him to work about how he's competing with Lionel Farger and Mark Upton at the state titles down in Mollymook. He told me it was his proudest achievement, apart from having me. It was huge surf, and Dad hadn't told Lionel that he was going for it no matter what. Stop it, you. Got infection. He said boats were turning back and flipping over, and Lionel was looking at him a little bit worried, but Dad just went for it and they ended up getting a bronze medal. It was either that, or before I started telling this story, he had heard Ashley taking our McDonald's orders and wanted to disappear from the world before we ate in front of him. By this stage, Dad hadn't eaten for 20 days. Lots of people told us how lucky he was to have us, but the truth was we were lucky to have him, and I would give anything to have him back. I love you, I miss you, and life's just not the same. Well done, guys.
Thanks, girls. Some amazing stories there and personal shares, and it's incredible to hear. Peter's brother Jim Akehurst is in New Zealand and unable to attend the service today, and so we're just going to hear some words that Jim has sent over, and they'll be read by Jamie Carter.
People back. Peter's younger brother Jim and his wife Heather, who live in New Zealand, have not been able to safely travel across the ditch to be here today, and have therefore asked me to read this contribution to the celebration of Peter's life on their behalf. Firstly, we would like to acknowledge and thank his direct family for their incredible support to Pete throughout his life, his health demise, and for keeping us in the loop so we did not feel so remote. All of you here today are a testament to the quality of his friendships and to the extent of his community involvement. We are a family of 3 brothers, Sid being the eldest by some 7 years, and with us being relatively close in age, we naturally tended to share many of our early life experiences. Some that come to mind are attending kindergarten, where Pete often got the job, somewhat grumpily, of bringing home any toys that I had forgotten. Schooling at East Linford Primary and North Sydney High Schools, going through the scouting movement together, where we learned that being was more important than appearing to be or even talking about it. Staggering start swimming races against the locals at Saltpan Cove, Baths, each with our own handicap which reduced as we improved. Learning to sail and then racing moths initially off Clairville Beach and later at Bayview. Practicing driving skills as teenagers on the daily commute with our father to various North Shore train stations. Helping our parents develop and progressively build on their block of land at Newport which fronted onto Pittwater. Many of these growing up experiences helped to shape Peter into the man you all knew and to become an excellent sportsman. For example, he was an A-grade squash player and could easily beat me playing left-handed with an 8-point start. A couple of stories for you from the family archives. The first involving a bit of sibling rivalry. On cold mornings at Roseville, a prime spot on waking was to race and hop into our mother's bed for a snuggle. If I got there first, there was a need to watch out for a foot pushing me out once he got in. If I got there first, a loud voice would proclaim, "No room, AU." Well, Pete, if I managed to make the pearly gates and you were there to greet me, I'm half expecting to hear you call out, "No room, AU." The second story contains the lesson that sharing is not always what you think it is. During World War II, toys were scarce in supply and we were pretty possessive of those we did have. Pete would very reasonably suggest that I put one of mine on the table so that we could both share it. In a flash, it was gone, and so was he. Pete had quite a few nicknames throughout his life, but one from his early days you may not have heard was Flaky, an abbreviation of Peter Flake First, as he tended to fall asleep towards the end of having a few beers with our sailing mates. Subsequent choices in our 20s took us to different directions, he to Avalon and me to New Zealand. Some of Heather and my most favourite memories of these later times, which we often recollect with pleasure, are the Christmas holidays at 82 Prince Alfred Parade that we spent with all the family, staying with Peter and Judy's family at the Island Resort in Noosa, and Pete always arriving in New Zealand with a bottle of Blue Sapphire to share the odd drink during his stay. I feel privileged to have had Peter as a brother, and we are in awe that through his accounting practice, sporting involvement and community activities, he has brought so many of you together for his celebration. It is therefore a wonderful opportunity to reflect on a life well lived and to appreciate that we have been able to be a part of it. You are now at peace, big brother.
And Emily's now going to read a few words also as well. Thanks.
We're sorry in advance.
To our Pa, my forever role model. The number of hearts broken in this room goes to show what an admirable man you were. An Avalon Beach Surf Club IRB legend, a kind-hearted accountant passionate about his clients, a golf enthusiast, a loving husband, an incredible father, and the world's greatest Pa. You truly left the world a better place than you found it. When I was 10, we were asked to do an interview for our role model for a school assignment. I asked Mum and Dad if I could interview them, and of course neither of them wanted to do it. They suggested I reach out to Pa. After sitting down with him and asking him a bunch of questions, I learned quickly that he was a man of many talents. It was by far the easiest assignment I've ever done. The way he spoke about the ocean, the surf club, golf, surf skis, IRBs, and his business truly goes to show his passions for the things he loved. Words can't explain the happiness my little 10-year-old self felt when he hugged me on the wall at his office, and it sat there for like 20 years or something, I don't know. I can never thank you enough for all the happy memories you created for us. You made our childhood unforgettable, with your cheeky sense of humour, bright cheery smile, and a heart of pure gold. The home you and Nanny lived in was our escape from our crazy mothers. A safe space where we felt nothing but constant love and support. I pray that my children grow up to be at least half the men you were. I will share with them the same stories that you told me growing up, tell them about your love of the sea and what a kind heart you had. I'll teach them all my knowledge of the beach and show them how to catch waves and duck dive under them in the same place that you taught me, down at Avalon Beach. Your love for the ocean will forever hold our connection together, and whenever we are missing you, we'll pal out and reminisce. You passed away the same way that you lived, surrounded by loved ones who all adore you. The strength, courage and resilience you showed in your final weeks were admirable. You put up a tough fight against a battle impossible to win. It brings me comfort knowing you are now at peace and can finally rest. On behalf of myself, Sophie, Jack, Jamie, Tara, Blake, Abby and Ella, it's an absolute privilege to call you our grandfather. We are all eternally thankful for you. You will forever be loved and you will forever be missed. Until we meet again, I love you, Pa.
Thanks, girls. I'll call now Johnny Harper and Pete Carter to share some stories. Thank you.
Might need Mel to focus.
Yeah, she does that well. I'm not poking. She does that well. Big boy pants,
I
Johnny.
need to pull that microphone down.
I met Peter when I was 15 years old. It was 1980 and my friends and I were giving out bronze medallions. Peter's one of our trainers. Our IRB licences were soon to follow, and before we knew it, we had been enlisted as patients in this new sport called IRB racing. It was my friends and I that gave Peter his nickname Digger. He was only about 40, but to us he was so old. Old digger was what we called him back then. The royal flush was a common occurrence back at Avalon Beach in those days, and we were usually the victims. My mates and I thought it would be a good idea to share this ritual with other clubs. You can imagine our surprise when the other clubs didn't share our enthusiasm for the practice, especially the Whale Beach Surf Club president when his son got flushed. Despite the embarrassment to our club, Digger understood us and forgave us. I've made so many good memories with Pete, many of them made while travelling away for IRB competitions. I loved going away with and competing with him and the team. What happens away stays away became the catch cry over time. The Holy Wells incident, Redhead and Mooloolaba immediately come to mind. Nobody ever got hurt and no crimes were ever committed, but some people would definitely be embarrassed by our bad behaviour. Digger was usually accepting of our youthful shenanigans, but he always let us know when we had gone too far. So many incredible friendships have been bonded by the glue of Peter Akehurst. I've met some of my closest friends through Digger and his IRB team. Paul Jones can't be here today, but one of the things he has asked me to say is that he would never have met his beautiful wife Michelle if Peter hadn't given him the opportunity to run her over in an IRB. I love talking crap with Pete after a few drinks. He always knew when he had too much to drink. It was when he changed from beers to reds, displaying little white foam on the corner of his mouth. One of my favourite trips with Pete was to New Zealand. We climbed Mount Taranaki and floated down a river, sitting in inner tubes through underground caves. And then there was our legendary game of golf with Jimmy Dalgleish. He and I talked up our golf prospects against Pete for ages. Of course, Pete flogged us. Oh yeah, and we also competed in the New Zealand National IRB titles. My amazing mum brought my brother, sister and me up from an early age. She had boyfriends here and there, but nobody has been a male Nobody has been a male role model as much as Peter. Like any good dad, he has been and still is a massive influence on my life. He has also been an incredible mentor to so many others within our IRB team over the years. It is sadly the end of an era. I've spent many hours in Pete's office over the years. Hardly any of them were talking about tax. I can't imagine how many hours Digger donated to both me and the surf club from that office. Judy was so very patient with us both. I've met so many good people in the surf club over the years. Straight shooters was a term that Peter used. None shot straighter than Peter. Loyal, honest, sincere, fair, understanding, forgiving and trustworthy are just some of the words that describe Digger. You could never get him to cheat on your tax though. Reflection brings me both tears and laughter from his beautiful family that he loved so much to the opposing teams that we competed against. Digger will be and is already so very badly missed. But an incredible man he was. Go well, Pete.
Good job, Johnny.
Thanks guys. I'm actually just going to start off today by reading a few thoughts from another man that couldn't be here today, Billy Wall. It was with the text message from Mel that hit me. Bill, Dad showed me where the bottle of red was. You can come and collect it. What's happened, Mel? Dad's passed away. So what's the story behind that bottle of red wine? Well, a few years ago, Pete and I decided to buy each other a good bottle of red wine. and share it at the club's 100th. Or whoever survives can drink both red wine. So the deal was set with the handshake. Pete and I go a long way back. I first met Pete in 1977-78 when nippers were buying an IRB for water safety, and a bunch of us were trained to do our bronze medallion. We met our instructor, Pete Akehurst. So after the induction, he started to train us. After much hard work and those stupid bloody belt swims, he got us through. Now it was on to IRB training. Peter, Fred, myself, Rod Oldfield, John Lee and Brian Alexander started the training. So many hours on Pittwater, then lots of hours practicing in the surf at Ave and doing water safety for nippers. The examiner came to put us through the test. We all got through before he would sign us off, he said, "Call me when there's a decent surf running." So after a couple of weeks, Pete rang back and got us through to do the test again. A very nervous team, we got through. This was the beginning of Pete having a long and happy relationship with IRBs at Avalon Beach. Pete got us started as a raw bunch going into IRB carnivals up and down the coast. Soldiers Beach brings back so many memories. The people we met, the many friendships were formed, and driving in some of the most amazing surf. Pete was the backbone of the IRB team, organising us, filling in the entries. The first branch carnivals at North Palm Beach, not a good start for Pete's team. The next 3 carnivals were okay, and at Newport, Pete's team totally cleaned up. Pete was always looking for an edge, propellers, new boats, etc., much to the disgust of Rick Miller, seeing most of the money spent on IRBs and not surf boats. It was part of a long, strange relationship between the two. Peter also had Rick's super fit crew to get IRBs as part of their racing team, and they were very successful, great drivers and crews. I can't talk about drivers and crews without the mention of one person, Johnny Harper. He's the best I've ever seen in an IRB, whether it was a crewman or a driver. He was definitely Pete's favourite. Pete leaves Avalon Beach with a very strong place in the club and racing. There are many tales to tell about the teams and trips away, but as you will understand, what goes away stays away. It's a pretty common theme, really. Lovely. My last conversation with my pal Pete was about a year ago when I rang him to offer his condolences regarding my son Simon. It was a hard call for both of us. He was finding it difficult to talk, and he had me in tears. I made the very hard decision that when Peter got bad, I would not go to visit him, as I wanted to remember the way he was. Judy lost her man, the girls have lost a dad, and Avalon's lost its longest serving mare. Peter was always one step ahead of me. Birthdays, bronze medallion, club captain, life member, and now he pulls the pin before me. Well, at least Mel and I will share that red together. I'll miss you, Pete. Avalon Beach will never be the same again. The visits will be so boring. Rest in peace, Billy Wall. My little reflection is going to be pretty quick because there's not much we can really discuss here. No, it's an absolute pleasure to be able to stand up here today and talk about such an amazing mentor and coach. These memories are written by Paul Duct Tape Jones, who was my driver and crewmate and could unfortunately not be here today. We are lucky enough to have some great mentors in our life. Digger was one of those mentors that was just that cool head. He always allowed us to go away, have a great time, but he'd also know how to pull us in line if needed. Duct tape reminds me of the time we were racing at the World Titles. This was just down at Manly, and everyone was given pool boats and engines. This meant that everyone had the same equipment. Duct Tape and I made the final, and Digger calmly pulled us aside and said, it's lucky you two knuckleheads know nothing about engines. We all have the same gear, you got this. We raced, we come second, until the infamous lane judge come down and DQ'd us. Obviously duct tape and I, being the reserve types, took this in our stride and weren't blowing up at all. Digger just calmly walked over to us and said, "Next time, fellas." That's just the type of legend he was. You could tell he was shattered, but he just wanted to get on with his. It's right about now, Digger, that I really have to apologise to you on behalf of all the IRB team for giving you so much grief over the years. We actually really believed that you'd be a long-haired hippie if it wasn't for us. From Jason Brown rolling another brand new motor, turning the cans. I believe it's up to number 3 now, Jace, if you're out there, number 3, turning the cans. To Jimmy Dalgleish toe surfing through the competition area at Kiama. Or Joel Walkabout Seaton missing another race. Maybe it was just the constant yelling at every carnival that we should go to bed, we've got a race tomorrow. Or maybe Ian, or just trying to keep Ian Dalgleish away from chips and gravy. We certainly had heaps of memories and stories to tell. Most of them we have to keep to ourselves. I honestly don't know how you did it. For all the awesome trips away from Kiama to Maroochydore, we sure had some great time. And as Johnny said, what goes on tour stays on tour. Well, I'll be raising that infamous glass of red for you today, Digger, and I'll be reciting a couple of race quotes that you always said to us. Cool is quick. Digger, you'll be surely missed. A legend, loved by so many. I love this time we spent together racing. Your legacy will forever live in my heart and memories. We're just going to lighten the mood a little bit. What do we think of Digger?
He's alright.
Lovely. Thanks, guys.
Thanks guys, fantastic memories there and some good stories. We're going to open it up to the floor now if anyone's got some memories that they would like to share. I know it takes a minute or so to maybe get your house in order and to think of those stories. I'll just read out now a message sent through as an apology by Roger Sayers, OAM, another life member from Avalon Beach, unfortunately suffering from COVID and can't be here today. He obviously offers his apologies. He can't be there today. I've known Peter and his family for over 40 years in Avalon. He was a fellow life member of the surf club, my accountant and my friend. Having 3 daughters like the Akehurst, our family regularly benefited from helpful parenting advice passed on by Judy at the tennis courts. Pete held many positions in the surf club over the years, including club captain and chief instructor. But the role he enjoyed the most was anything to do with IRBs, especially anything to do with racing IRBs. He competed in IRBs and trained many drivers, including myself, and cruised for surf rescue and racing, passing on skills and his knowledge with good humour. He was always experimenting with some new idea to do with the propellers, the motor, or whatever it was to increase the speed. And the club could come away from an event with more medals than other clubs. His enthusiasm was infectious to anyone else hooked on IRBs and devoted a lot of his time to training, improving the performance of competitors throughout constant practice. In the process, he developed better surf lifesavers and better people. There are many, many young adults now who benefited from Pete's willingness to devote time to them. It didn't matter the medal results eluded from the teams, there was always the next time to look to. Always positive. Pete was well known and well respected throughout the Australian surf life-saving IRB community. He organised and ran Avalon Beach's premier annual Warren Mitchell IRB Carnival, which attracted competitors from all over Australia for many years, because Avalon Beach, the home of the IRB, reputation for always turning on a big surf for the event. Last Saturday, the New South Wales IRB fraternity said farewell to Pete with Judy and other family members in attendance at the second round of racing at IRB. Digger Akehurst was well known in IRB racing before racing commenced. Avalon Beach SLSE's IRB Digger named in his honour did a drive-by in tribute. Pete was a good bloke and he will be missed. Rest in peace, Pete, from Roger Sayers, OAM. If anyone else has any memories or stories I'd like to share from the floor. Thanks. That's all right. I know it's hard. I'm sure there'll be plenty of stories shared in the adjacent room after we break away. Now we'll just invite the grandchildren. There's some white roses down here for each grandchild can come forward, and they'll place a white rose on the treasurer's casket.
That was easy.
Thanks, guys. I think we've got some photos now to share of Peter's life and some times to remember.
The lights here on the show. I'm the face in the landscape and go look for an electrician. I've got a couple
If you look inside your heart, you don't have to be afraid of what you are. There's an answer if you reach into your soul, and the sorrow that you know will melt away. And then a hero comes along with the strength to carry on, and you cast your fears aside, and you know you can survive. So when you feel like hope is gone, look inside you and be strong, and you'll finally see the truth.
images there, and so amazing. Thanks for putting that together. As we kind of close off in our ceremony today, I would like to invite everyone to jump in next door and continue to mingle through here to share some stories and talk to the family and continue to celebrate Peter's life. One of his final wishes, I wish for him to be taken from the service today, is an invitation to John Harper, Pete Carter, Matt Mayle, Nick Sampson, Andrew Crow and Donovan McIntosh, if they could come forward. And they'll help Peter on his last journey out of service today.
That light card will be